Last week, after our class, someone said to me, I'm really enjoying this study of Ecclesiastes because I appreciate the philosophical contemplation. I enjoy the philosophical discussions. And indeed, Ecclesiastes is arguably the most philosophical book in all of the Scripture. When we think about the books of the Old Testament, the first 17 books align themselves very nicely into historical categories, where from Genesis through Esther we have the story of the beginning of the world, the promises to Abraham, and the establishment of the Old Covenant, pretty much in historical order. Then the final 17 books of the Old Testament are the prophets. We have the major prophets and the minor prophets. And stuck in between, in our Bible at least, are the 5 books that we typically call the wisdom books. And we categorize them as the wisdom literature. And of those 5 wisdom books, Ecclesiastes is indeed very philosophical in nature. Let's think about that word philosophy for a moment. It's a combination of 2 Greek words. This half, the sophy, being the Greek word sophia. It is the Greek word for wisdom. When Krista and I were blessed with our first child, and we found out it was going to be a girl, as we began to ponder what we would begin calling this girl, we wanted something that we liked the sound of course, as most parents do, but we also wanted something with a meaning that would be clear to her and to us, and eventually we settled in on Sophia. We want her to grow up and be a woman of great godly wisdom. The philo side is probably a word you all know. What is it? Love. We think of the word Philadelphia, love of brother, and that's the name of one of our cities in America. Philosophy is the love of wisdom. It is the pursuit of wisdom. And these 5 books in the middle of our Old Testament are concerned with wisdom as God has revealed it, and Ecclesiastes is indeed a book where Solomon is pursuing wisdom. Now, we can break philosophy down into a couple of different categories. There is the theoretical aspect or the speculative aspect of philosophy. This is where students pursue the big questions, the big issues, the ultimate issues, such as what gives life meaning? Where is our hope and what is our hope? Where did we come from? Where are we going? These are the why questions of existence. Solomon has certainly been interacting with the big questions, the why questions of life. Indeed, he has been seeking some sort of answer to the question, what gives life meaning? And of course, he has been looking at it from the perspective of earth, under the sun, as if there was nothing beyond the sun. If there is no God, if there's nothing out there, then can we find meaning here and now? And his repeated refrain is, no, it's all vanity, just a mist, just a breath, just a vapor. So he interacts with the theoretical big questions. In days gone by, this was a more popular pursuit among academicians of every level. You would learn and study philosophy in elementary school, certainly by junior high or high school, and the secondary education, college, and so on. You would have classes in logic and philosophy wrestling with and dealing with those big questions. And as people interacted with the big why questions, they would bring all of the studies of logic and mental powers to bear on that subject to try to find answers to the big questions. That's not so popular anymore in our day. Philosophy is not required of most college majors, and it's an elective that someone can take if he wants to, and normally he chooses not to. And there's a very good reason for that. Not that it's boring, though that's the reason some would give, but the reason people don't choose to study philosophy in our day is because we have already answered the question. There is no answer to the questions of why. There is no hope. There is no ultimate meaning, because our culture has come to the same conclusion that Solomon has been wrestling with. There's nothing out there. There's nothing beyond the sun. If you remember, in other contexts, we've talked about the Kantian wall, where Immanuel Kant of several centuries ago put this wall up between the noumenal realm, the realm out there beyond what we can perceive, and the phenomenal realm, the realm down here where we live. And he said, even if there is truth out there, you can't get at it. So you're stuck with what's here. And society and culture has adopted that undergirding philosophy, and so they're no longer pursuing the ultimate questions because it's already been answered. There is nothing to find out there. Consequently, any course of study that would cause someone to think about the ultimate questions seems a waste of time, because you're not going to find anything anyway. So, most of our philosophical pursuits today are on the practical side, what we might call practical philosophy, where we study how to live life wisely here and now and get the most out of life. What Solomon has been doing is trying to answer the theoretical questions or the speculative questions in light of practical philosophy. Is there anything here that will give ultimate meaning? And the repeated refrain is no. As he has pursued practical philosophy, as he has engaged himself in all of the things that life offers, he has asked the question, does this give me meaning? Does this give me hope? And he began to ask the question of work. Maybe as I pursue my labors, as I put my hand to work, I will come up with the meaning of life. And as I acquire wealth and riches, maybe I will find something that causes me to say, aha, I have found it. This is the answer to the big questions. But of course, the more he pursued work, the more he pursued riches, the more he realized it's vanity. It's all a vapor. Then he said, well, maybe if it's not in work, maybe it's in play. Maybe as I pursue fun and entertainment and pleasure, maybe then I will find the answer to life's ultimate questions. And he pursued that with great vigor. We looked at this last time. As he went after sexual pleasure, as he went after drunkenness and wine, as he pursued building great orchards and enjoying all the wonderful food that he could acquire, and arts and entertainment, as he hired great musicians to come and play at his home, and he built great houses and estates all over, and in all of that he said, it's all just vanity. It's all just a mist. So, he says, maybe there's one more area of life to pursue. Maybe I will find the answers to my questions about meaning through the practical things of life, through pursuing life with great wisdom. And in chapter 2, verse 12, he says, so I turned to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will the man do who will come after the king except what has already been done? So he's going to pursue wisdom with the same intensity that he pursued everything else, to see if there's any answer here. And he has a purpose. It's not merely to find the answer to the question, but he's also concerned with those who come after him. Maybe he can find the answers to the why questions through wisdom, and then pass that on to the next generation and leave some legacy behind. So he wants to know, does practical wisdom provide meaning? And he says in verse 13, I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Now we're seeing some benefit to something. He says, I pursued wisdom, and the conclusion was obvious. Living life wisely, with prudence, with careful common sense, is far superior to being a fool. It's so much better. It's like comparing darkness where you can't see anything to living in the light where you can see things. Now we need to remember as we consider Solomon's pursuit of wisdom, the kind of wisdom he's talking about here. Or rather, the source of his wisdom. He, of course, is the son of the great king of Israel, David. David, the man after God's own heart. David, the king who had led Israel into dominance and victory. The Lord had blessed him at every turn. Certainly there are a couple of large marks on his record, but he was the great king. He is shown how valuable and how esteemed he is when Jesus was pleased to be called the son of David. He was from the line of David. He was the heir to the throne promised to David. Solomon was his son. And after King David died, and Solomon was put on the throne in his place, God came to him one day, and he said, Solomon, I have a proposition for you. Ask anything of me, and it's yours. I give you one request, you name it, and I will give it to you. This is like the quintessential finding of the magic lamp where you can rub it and out pops the genie. The genie says, I will give you 3 wishes, whatever you want. Maybe you've heard the story of the fisherman who was fishing along the beaches, and he finds this bottle and he pops it open and out comes this genie and he says, whew, thank you, I've been there for millennia. I've been wanting to get on there for a long time, and as a thank you I'm going to grant you any wish, just one wish, but you pick anything you want. And the man says, well, I have always wanted to go fishing in Hawaii, but I'm terrified of airplanes and boats make me claustrophobic, and so what I'd like is a road from here to Hawaii that I can just drive across and go fishing anytime that I want to. And the genie begins to think about it and thinks, well, that would take a lot of work, and imagine how deep down the supports would have to go to reach all the way to the bottom of the ocean, and all the pavement that it would take to make this road. Nah, that's just too much you're asking there. Ask for something else. And so the guy says, well, there is one other question that has always been on my mind. Could you explain women to me? Could you maybe reveal to me why they think the way they think, and why they're moody the way they're moody, and what makes them laugh, and what makes them cry, and all their temperamental ways? Basically, what makes women tick? And the genie says, would you like 2 lanes or 4 lanes? Solomon doesn't pop open a bottle or rub a magic lamp and have a genie come out and say, ask a wish. He has the Almighty God Himself say, Solomon, ask what you will, and I will give it to you. This is what this man Solomon asked. You have shown great loving kindness to your servant David my father, according as he walked before you in truth and righteousness and uprightness of heart toward you. And you have reserved for him this great loving kindness, that you have given him a son to sit on his throne as it is this day. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, yet I am but a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. Your servant is in the midst of your people, which you have chosen, a great people who are too many to be numbered or counted. So give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, to discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours? When God presents the opportunity to Solomon to ask anything he wants, Solomon says, well, I have been entrusted with the responsibility of leading and ruling this massive people of yours. So what I need more than anything else is wisdom. I need you to grant to me a discerning mind, the ability to lead these people well. So do you think God was pleased with Solomon's request? Indeed, he says, because you have asked this thing and have not asked for yourself long life, nor have asked riches for yourself, nor have you asked for the life of your enemies, but you have asked for yourself discernment to understand justice, behold, I have done according to your words. Behold, I have given you a wise and discerning heart, so that there has been no one like you before, nor shall one like you rise after you. I have also given you what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that there will not be any among the kings like you all your days. God was very pleased with his request, and he says, I will grant that. You will be the wisest man to walk the earth. And in addition to wisdom, I'm going to give you the things you didn't ask. I'm going to prosper you and bless you with might and with wealth and with long life. Solomon was given divine wisdom, and he was put to the test almost immediately. Maybe you're familiar with the story where two women come to him. Both of them had just given birth to a baby, but one of the infants had died. And now one of them was deceiving the other and trying to trick the other and claiming that the child was hers when in fact it was hers that had died. And so there's a battle going on, an argument as to whose child the living baby is. And in that day, of course, they did not have DNA tests where they could test this kind of thing. And so Solomon is asked to decide who is the rightful mother of this child. Solomon says to his servants, bring me a sword. And they go and get a sword. And he says, cut the baby in half and send half home with each mother. Because Solomon understood that the woman who truly was the mother of the living child would not stand to see the baby killed. And so the true mother said, no, don't harm the baby. Give it to her. She would rather the child live with somebody else than to see the child put to death. Solomon realizes this, says, take the child and give it to that woman. On and on, Solomon exercises this God-given wisdom. And his fame and his prudence is known throughout the world. You're familiar with the story of the Queen of Sheba, who comes with a great retinue of people and money and all kinds of gifts. And she travels to Solomon to pose question after question after question after question to him. And when she finishes her interaction with Solomon, she said, indeed, your wisdom is great. In fact, the half has not been told. Your intellect and your ability to render decisions far exceeds any of the stories that are going around about you. Solomon was a wise man. Again, Jesus refers to the wisdom of Solomon. It in and of itself is a proverbial statement, the wisdom of Solomon. The scripture says he wrote 3,000 proverbs and 1,005 songs. He was even an artist. And we have one of those songs in our Bible today. It's in that group of wisdom literature. It's the work that we know as the Song of Solomon or the Song of Songs. We have the entire book that we call Proverbs, most of them written by this wise man Solomon. And if you read through the book of Proverbs, you see it is chock full with practical wisdom. How to live life, how to excel in life, how to get the most out of life, how to prosper in life, how to get along with people in life. I've jotted down a few of these just to remind you of some of what Solomon wrote. He had a lot to say in the Proverbs about laziness. He says, a slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. In other words, if your hands are idle, if you're not doing anything, if you're not working, you're likely to end up with nothing. Unless, of course, you live in modern-day America, then the government will provide you with something. But the hand of the diligent, the one who works hard, he will prosper. Another one of my favorites, probably you are familiar with it. Go to the ant, O sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, a little video game, a little internet. And poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. If you're going to live life like a slug or a sloth, for years, for decades of my life, I didn't know a sloth was an animal. I've heard and used the word slothful. And then I went to the zoo one day, and I said, what in the world is that? I've never seen a creature like that. And I look on the little placard, it says sloth. And sure enough, as I watched, for about 15 minutes, it moved about an inch. And I realized where the word slothful comes from, or sluggard. Get up, slug! Any of you fathers ever said that to your kids who are sleeping in at 9 o'clock on Saturday afternoon? My dad didn't use that terminology, but it used to drive him crazy to come in at 8:30 or 9 o'clock on a Saturday and see me sleeping. I didn't get to do that very often. So he teaches us about the diligence required to prosper. He also has much to say about the benefits of working hard. For instance, he says, do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. Again, it's not an absolute statement that guarantees success, but the man who works hard and becomes an expert in his field and is diligent is likely to achieve great things. He speaks about the dangers of being poor. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. So if you aren't applying yourself to acquiring your own sustenance, and you are required then to borrow from somewhere else, you are now indebted to that person, and that may cost you more than merely money and interest. In fact, in his culture, it truly may have meant you becoming a slave, because if you could not pay off your debts, the final way to do that was to sell yourself as the ongoing servant of your master. He also talks about planning. Prepare your work outside. Get everything ready for yourself in the field, and after that, build your house. So, draw up your blueprints, get all the materials laid out, be certain of how you're going to approach this thing, and once you have it all there, then begin your project. As opposed to like I have a tendency to do, and that is to just go at it, and then realize, oh yeah, I need that, and I should have had that, I need to go to the store for that, and 5 or 6 trips to Home Depot later, I'm still not anywhere near where I need to be for this project. He had a few things to say about wives, and about women, and about outward appearances. One of my favorites is, like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. All you have to do is look at the supermarket tabloids to vindicate him on that one. He says, it is better to live in a corner of a roof than in a house shared with a contentious woman. And he ought to know after 700 wives. But he also says this, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. So somewhere out of those 700 wives, there were some worth talking about. He warns his sons about the dangers of the temptresses. He says, the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps follow the path to Sheol. Stay away no matter how sweet she looks, no matter how attractive the harlot is. Don't pursue her. It will end up in destruction and distress. He goes on and says, can a man carry fire next to his chest and his clothes not be burned? Or can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be scorched? In our day, we would say you can't play with fire without getting burned. So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife. None who touches her will go unpunished. People do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy his appetite when he is hungry, but if he is caught, he will pay sevenfold. He will give all the goods of his house. He who commits adultery lacks sense. He who does it destroys himself. Now, he's not talking about destroying the person who commits adultery through the inner turmoil and guilt and his conscience. He's very specific. He will get wounds and dishonor, and his disgrace will not be wiped away. For jealousy makes a man furious, and he will not spare when he takes revenge. He will accept no compensation. He will refuse, though you multiply gifts. What he's saying is, it's like playing with fire to go after another man's wife, because you may provoke that man to take revenge, and he may kill you out of his anger. Don't do it, sons, he says. Don't be so foolish. She may look good, it may seem wonderful from this perspective, but you are literally playing with fire in this. And just a summary of all that he's teaching in Proverbs, he says, my son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. He says, my son, I want you to learn from me. Learn all of these things that I'm teaching you. Learn this wisdom because it will make your life better. It will fulfill you. It will extend your life. It'll keep you out of trouble. It'll keep you from getting burned. It'll keep that woman's husband from chasing after you. If you use wisdom in choosing your wife, you won't rather be living out on the edge of the roof. Use discretion that I'm teaching you. He says, because to live this way, to live with this kind of astuteness, is far superior, far surpassing of being a fool, of being indiscreet with your life. It's as superior as light is from darkness. And so we think Solomon has finally hit pay dirt. He has finally struck gold. He's finally found meaning in life. If we live life with wisdom, if we use discretion in all of our decision making, if our investments and our family choices and our jobs and our behaviors and our planning and our construction projects and the way we keep house and all the various things we do, if we simply apply common sense, then when it's all said and done, we can exhale and say, this is it. This is what life is about. This is wonderful. It says, the wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. The wise man sees clearly. This is great. But his optimism doesn't last more than 2 verses. It says, and yet I know that one fate befalls them both the wise man and the fool. Then I said to myself, as is the fate of the fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been extremely wise? What is the profit in all this God-given wisdom? I've applied it in every area of my life. Why? So I said to myself, this too is a vapor. This too is vanity, meaningless. All of my wisdom is futile. Why? For there is no lasting remembrance of the wise man, as with the fool, inasmuch as in the coming days all will be forgotten, and how the wise man and the fool alike die. Solomon says, there is a great equalizer. There are wealthy people and there are poor people. There are those who enjoy everything this life has to offer, and there are those who are living miserably virtually every day. There are those who are complete and utter fools, and there are those like me who have God-given divine wisdom to pursue life with, and yet all of them in every category someday are going to find themselves with a date at the graveyard. We're all going to end up dead. And so at that point, what's the benefit? What's the long-lasting profit of having all this wisdom? What is to gain for a man who makes wise choice after wise choice after wise choice all the days of his life, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 centuries after he's dead? Nobody's going to remember him. As he talked about last week, whatever he built up, all of the wealth that he garnered, it'll probably be given to some blockhead who will blow it all. There's no ultimate substance and purpose and hope and meaning in practical wisdom. It's futile like everything else. He says, so I hated life, for the work which had been done under the sun was grievous to me. That word literally is evil. It was all evil. Because everything is futility and striving after wind. I pursued wisdom. I gave everything I had to solving life's problems, and my conclusion is there's no meaning here. This is just like everything else I have tried. If there is nothing beyond the sun, if all that there is what we can perceive with our senses, then the wisest man to ever walk the earth is no better off or no worse off than anybody else. Because for all of us, it is a waste of time. There must be hope beyond the sun if there are any answers to the big questions of life, to the ultimate issues of life. And our culture strives in vain, in vanity, to find answer to the big questions. There are people all over the place. Books don't cease to be written. People on cable television, on news channels, on the internet. There are plenty of people that are ready to fill your mind with more wisdom, to tell you how to live life better, how to get along with your finances or as a family, or how to make a job transition to great success. So there's a commercial I hear on a classical station that I listen to almost every day that pops on and says, do you know what's the difference between you and all the millionaires in the country? They have chosen to be millionaires, as if it were just as simple to say, I'm going to be a millionaire. So do it. So go and make your millions. Solomon says at the end, you're dead. What are you going to do with those millions? You're dead. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with your high-ranking place in any corporation or military or whatever? You're dead. You're going nowhere with it. That is the hope under the sun. However, we know that Ecclesiastes is not the sum total of Solomon's understanding of reality. Thankfully, when he wrote this book of Proverbs, a collection of his wise sayings, this is how he began. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in wise behavior, righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the naive, to the youth, knowledge and discretion, A wise man will hear and increase in learning, and a man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. To understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. These are all the reasons why he wrote these down. To enlighten his sons especially to wisdom. And when he gets into his teaching, the first principle, the first proverb, the first thing he wants his son to understand is this. The beginning of wisdom, or the beginning of knowledge, is the fear of the Lord. The first place to begin, if we are going to have any meaning, any purpose, any hope, any understanding, is to look beyond the sun. And as we see throughout the book of Proverbs, as we see through the book of Ecclesiastes, if you read it all, he does, on several occasions, come back to this fundamental truth. There must always be in our minds the perspective of God. It is the only thing that gives life meaning. It is the only thing that causes us to strive for true righteousness. God is the purpose behind everything we do. Without God, there is no purpose. And again, our culture is simply playing games with themselves. They're deceiving themselves. They are ignoring the truth that is screaming in their ears when they try to find hope and purpose without believing in God. They can't. There's a very clear reason why our culture has always got noise. Because people don't want to stop and listen to the silence that might cause them to really think and ponder what is beyond the sun. They drown out the silence with noise. But there must be something beyond the sun if we are going to have any hope. And Solomon understands that. For those of us on this side of 1 AD, if you will, we know that there is a more specific manifestation of the wisdom of God. Here's the way the Apostle Paul said it. The word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the cleverness of the clever I will set aside. Where is the wise man? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God the world through its wisdom did not come to know God, God was well pleased through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. For indeed Jews ask for signs and Greeks search for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, to Jews a stumbling block, and to Gentiles foolishness, but to those who are the called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. If we are going to find hope, it's not enough simply to believe in a God, a being, or a force, or a theory, or a concept out there. Wisdom, eternal wisdom, has come in the form of a man. And His name is Jesus Christ. If we are going to find significance and purpose and hope and joy and fulfillment and satisfaction in life, it has to begin with Jesus Christ. As Paul said, He is the wisdom of God in the flesh. And so we pursue truth, we pursue hope, we pursue the answers to the big questions of life in the cross of Jesus Christ. We know, as Solomon went on to say in Ecclesiastes, there is coming a day when we will stand before the great judge, and our deeds will be brought into account. And our only hope in that day is the atoning work of Jesus on the cross. And because He has died and suffered the wrath that we deserve, we have been forgiven of those sins, all of them, and we will spend eternity in heaven face to face with wisdom in human form. That's good news.
Amen.
Amen.